It's 2003 and manga is everywhere. Shonen Jump is packed with heroes, teenagers with big dreams, bigger hearts, and zero moral complexity. Naruto wants to be Hokage. Luffy wants to be king of the pirates. Ichigo just wants to protect the people he loves. The formula is simple. Give the audience someone pure, someone who earns their power through suffering and friendship and sheer refusal to quit. That formula had worked for 50 years. It was the entire foundation of the genre. Then a writer named Sugumi Oba walked into an editor's office with a concept so twisted, so calculated, and so dangerously smart that it would break that foundation completely. He didn't pitch a hero. He didn't pitch an anti-hero. He pitched a monster who felt exactly like a hero and dared the audience to figure out the difference. That monster had a name, Light Yagami. This is the story of how Oba engineered the most psychologically dangerous protagonist in anime history. How he built a character so perfectly constructed that millions of people watched a mass murderer and genuinely rooted for him. How every single detail, the intelligence, the looks, the family, the philosophy, was a deliberate trap, and how that same perfection became Light's only real weakness. The weapon is built to understand how dangerous Light Yagami really is. You have to understand what problem Oba was trying to solve, and it wasn't a storytelling problem. It was a moral one. In 2003, the most popular manga in the world was Naruto. The protagonist was loud, emotional, and desperately wanted to be loved. He was an underdog, an orphan, a kid the whole village laughed at. That formula worked because it created automatic sympathy. You felt sorry for Naruto before he ever did anything worth feeling sorry about. The audience was on his side from page 1, and nothing he did could change that. But Oba didn't want to write a character you felt sorry for. He wanted to write a character you agreed with, not just tolerated, not just found interesting, genuinely, uncomfortably agreed with. That's a completely different problem, and it required a completely different solution. So Oba started from scratch. He didn't give Light a painful backstory, no dead parents, no village that rejected him, no trauma to explain his worldview. Light Yagami has the best life of anyone in Death Note, top of his class, athletic, beloved by his family, the kind of teenager who exists in real life only in rumor. Oba made Light perfect on purpose, because the moment you give a villain a tragic origin, you've handed the audience an excuse. You've told them, this is why he's broken. Oba refused to do that. Light isn't broken. Light is just like this, and that's so much scarier. Then Oba gave him a point of view that makes total sense. Light finds the Death Note, a notebook. One rule, write a name, that person dies. And Light's first instinct isn't panic. It isn't guilt. It isn't even excitement, not really, it's clarity. He looks at the world, overflowing with criminals, murderers, people the justice system failed to stop, people who would keep hurting others for decades. And he makes a decision. Someone has to fix this. He has the tool. The math is simple. That logic is airtight, and that's not an accident. Oba spent months making Light's philosophy watertight, because the moment you find a hole in the argument, you stop being seduced by it. You stop being afraid of it. And Light Yagami only works as a character if you are afraid of him and rooting for him at the exact same time. The first 5 episodes of Death Note are pure, deliberate seduction. Light kills criminals, dangerous ones, repeat offenders, serial killers whose faces you see on the news during the episode, whose victims you meet first. Oba is meticulous about this sequencing. Show you the victim, make you feel the injustice, then cut to Light solving it. By the time you realize you've been nodding along to a murder, it's already happened 4 more times, and you've approved every single one. The trap snaps shut quietly. By the time Light writes the name of his first genuinely innocent victim, a detective named Penber, who simply got too close, you're already so deep into Light's worldview that you rationalize it. He had to. It was necessary. The mission is bigger than one person's. That's not the story talking. That's you. Oba wrote a character so well constructed that the audience does his dirty work for him. That's not storytelling. That's a trap. And you walked right into it. A protagonist with no real opposition isn't a story. It's a wish fulfillment fantasy. Oba needed a counterweight. Someone smart enough to genuinely threaten Light, but not so powerful that the tension collapsed. He needed a rival as precisely engineered as Light himself. Enter L is Light's mirror image. Same raw intelligence, opposite everything else. Where Light needs total control over every variable, L thrives in deliberate chaos. He makes himself unpredictable on purpose, because an opponent who can't be read can't be outmaneuvered. Where Light performs normalcy, the perfect grades, the easy smile, the model son who holds open doors, L performs dysfunction. He sits wrongs hunched or like something broken. He eats only sweets, stacking sugar cubes with the patience of someone who has nothing to prove. He speaks in flat, blunt observations that sound like insults, but are actually just facts. He is deliberately, pointedly strange, because Oba needed Els to exist entirely outside Light's operating system. Light can predict people, he cannot predict El, and that one asymmetry is what makes the whole war possible. The cat and mouse that follows is the greatest chess match in anime history, and the board keeps changing. Light engineers himself onto the Kira task force, the very investigation trying to catch him. He sits across a desk from the man hunting him every single day and feeds him false leads, manufactures dead ends, and steers the investigation away from himself with surgical precision. For weeks of story time, Light and El work side by side, each completely aware the other is suspicious, neither able to prove it. Every conversation is a duel with no weapons visible. Every handshake is a test. Every pause is a move. It is, by every measure, the most stressful working relationship in fiction. But then Light gets cornered. El's suspicion grows too dangerous. The psychological pressure too close. And here is where Ovbus makes the move that elevates Death Note from a great thriller to something else entirely. Light doesn't fight harder. He doesn't run. He doesn't double down on his lies. He erases his own memory. Light voluntarily surrenders the Death Note, and with it every memory of ever being Kira. He wipes himself clean, and in doing so, he makes himself genuinely, completely innocent, genuinely cooperative, genuinely useful to the investigation. Not as a performance, for real. Because if Light doesn't know he's Kira, no test can catch him. No psychological trap can spring. No truth serum, no lie detector, no amount of El's terrifying intuition can find something that isn't there. Think about what Oba built here. A protagonist so committed to winning that he engineers a version of himself that cannot be caught, because that version has nothing to hide. Light doesn't outsmart El in this arc. He outsmarted himself first on purpose, months in advance, knowing he'd come back. El cannot break Light's alibi, because Light's alibi is Light. That is the peak of Light's construction. The most over-engineered move by the most over-engineered character in anime. A man who treats his own identity as a variable he can subtract and restore on command. When Light recovers his memories on his own timeline in a controlled environment, exactly as planned, El is no closer to catching him than the day they met. Light gave up everything and came back with more. The God problem. Here's the thing about gods. They don't lose gracefully. After El's death, something shifts in Light. The war is won. The greatest opponent he ever faced is gone. And instead of becoming more careful, more controlled, more strategic, Light becomes something else. He becomes a believer, not in justice, in himself. This is the moment Oba has been building towards since page 1, because the entire architecture of Light's character was always as pointing at one destination. The thing that makes him so brilliant is the same thing that will destroy him. His intelligence is real, his logic is real, but his ego, the part of him that cannot accept being wrong, cannot accept being matched, cannot accept that the story might not end with him standing, that was never under his control. He just never noticed, because for so long it didn't matter. He was always the smartest person in the room, until he wasn't. The cracks in the design then come Nier and Mello, two successors to El, and Oba's most precise piece of engineering in the entire series. Nier and Mello are not better than El. Individually, neither of them could catch Light. Oba is explicit about this. Nier knows it, Mello knows it, the audience knows it. They are halves of a whole. Mello is emotion and aggression and controlled destruction. He creates chaos Light cannot model, cannot predict, cannot fully account for. He is the variable that breaks the equation, and Nier is patience weaponized. Cold, methodical, willing to spend years setting up a single move. He doesn't try to match Light's speed, he just waits. And in waiting, he builds a trap so specific, so tailored to exactly who Light is, that it can only be sprung one way. It has to make Light reveal himself voluntarily. And here is the cruelest thing Oba did. Light sees the trap. He is standing at the edge of it, looking down, and he knows exactly what it is and exactly how it works. He has enough information to walk away, to say nothing, to let the moment pass and fight another day. But he can't, because walking away means Nier wins, and Light Yagami would rather be caught than let someone else have the last move. He steps forward, he reveals himself, he loses, not because he was outsmarted, because he was outdisciplined. Nier and Mello didn't defeat Light's intelligence, they defeated his ego. And that was always the easier target, the ending, and what it means Light Yagami dies in an empty warehouse, shot, bleeding, crawling across a concrete floor. Ryuk watches from above with the same expression he's had since chapter 1, mild curiosity. Then he opens his notebook and writes a name. Not because Kira deserved punishment, not because justice demanded it, because the game is over and Ryuk is bored, and that was always the deal. Light was never a god. He was never a revolutionary. He was entertainment for an immortal with nothing better to do. And when the show ended, so did he. repeat. That's the last insult Oba designed. Light doesn't die because justice caught up with him. He doesn't die because good defeated evil, or because the system worked, or because the universe corrected itself. He dies because he was never anything more than a distraction, the god of the new world, ended by boredom. And then Oba gives you the final frame. Children in the street holding candles chanting Kira's name. Kira who never existed. Kira who killed thousands. Kira who was wrong from the very first name he ever wrote. Still worshipped. Still believed in. Still a god to the people he claimed to protect. Because that is the most disturbing thing about Light Yagami. It was never really about Light. It was about us. About what we will believe when someone smart enough and certain enough tells us they are doing it for the greater good. About how quickly justice becomes something else when the person delivering it stops answering to anyone. About how easy it is to worship a god you never had to meet. Oba didn't engineer a villain. He engineered a mirror, and he pointed it at everyone watching. The Legacy Death Note changed what anime was allowed to be. Before Light Yagami, the genre's relationship with morality was simple. Heroes were good. Villains were bad. The gray areas existed, but they were always resolved, always pointed back toward the light, toward friendship, toward the right answer. The audience was never really in danger of rooting for the wrong side, because the story would correct you if you tried. After Light Yagami, that contract was broken. Death Note proved that an anime could hand the audience a mass murderer and make them cheer, could make them feel complicit, could make them sit with the discomfort of having agreed, even briefly, even partially, with something genuinely monstrous. And it could do it so elegantly that they never even noticed until the ending credits. That opened a door. Without Light Yagami, there is no Han Liebert from Monster, no Makishima from Psycho-Pass, no Griffith from Berserk finding a new audience a decade later. Every morally sophisticated anime villain that followed owes something to the blueprint Oba drew. The idea that the most dangerous character isn't the one you hate. It's the one you agree with, right up until the moment you realize what you've agreed to. Oba spent 3 years writing a character so precisely constructed, so internally consistent, so psychologically airtight, that Light Yagami still lives rent-free in the heads of everyone who watched him. Not because Light was cool, not because he won, because he was right for just long enough and just wrong enough that you couldn't look away. The genius of Light Yagami isn't that he fooled L. It isn't that he fooled Nier or Mello or the entire world. It's that he fooled you, and the notebook was never the weapon. Light was.